Imagine this. What if you were the world's greatest gamer, right? And like you were renowned as this incredible player whose character within a game um, was one of the strongest and a legendary hero within the game. Now imagine that you fucking die while playing that game and you get sent into the Nordic realm, Valhalla, as a warrior, not because of your achievements in the real world, but because of your video game character's achievements. Well, that's what this manhwa is about. It's one of my favorites that I'm currently reading. It's called Valhalla Saga. It's really good. It's about you follow basically a young man named Lee Tae-ho, who is, like I said, a professional gamer who ends up dying while playing the game, and his character Karstedt, who's this dragon knight, because of his character, he gets sent into the world of Nordic mythology as a warrior for a specific goddess. I'm gonna say this goddess, the goddess Idun. He came to that world as her champion. This story is hella fun. It's obviously written by Jae-soon or Triple Line, and Triple Line is the artist. They do a really good job with this story. Link in the description on where you guys can read it. It's obviously on Webtoon, so if you guys have the app or anything, you guys can read it. But yeah, that's how this. That's what the synopsis of the story is. Now let's jump right into going over chapter 1 like we always do in these manhwa looks. Alright, so to start off chapter 1, we kind of start off in Korea, right? And Lee Tae-hoon, our protagonist, is getting ready to perform at one of Korea's soccer stadiums for like this video game tournament for the game that he plays, right? And so we start off by giving us like this picture of the stadium, and we see the advertisement that we saw prior that was zoomed in of Lee Tae-hoon getting sponsored by basically what is a Doritos knockoff, but they can't call it that due to copyright reasons, right? So we see this long line of people entering the stadium, I guess, to see Lee Tae-hoon and his team play in said tournament, right? So then we skip to the big grand entrance where the announcer's like finally entering, right? And then there's a whole lot of applause and there's a lot of light. We see the esports stadium where like one side's this team's computers, the other one's this team's computers, and they say today's main star, the MVP of the 6th World Championship. So we basically find out that Lee Tae-hoon is that guy with the MVP of the 6th and the MVP of the 7th World Championships he played in. And we see our boy walking in with his glasses glistening in the light as he's walking toward the stadium. The announcer then yells, "This is Lee Tae-ho!" And as his name gets announced, we find out that while that was happening, Lee Tae-ho gets fucking pulled from his world, and he then is sitting in fear while being stared at by these giant Viking of men, these big brute of men that are all Vikings with tattoos and shit, very intimidatingly looking at him, and he's then he says, "Or so they call me." So it turns out the announcer wasn't a random guy. It was Lee Tae-ho basically telling these Vikings who he was prior. And so he's now like finds himself in front of these guys where they're all in front of like a giant gate with like a lady standing behind and Lee Tae-ho facing this whole group of warriors, right? And so one of the warriors says, "Tae-ho, that's quite an unusual name." While another guy says his clothes are unusual too. And then the other guy that said the previous thing says he's also very small. And then the guy that talks about his unusual clothes says, "Tell me about it." So they're just fucking ganging up on my boy and making fun of him. Little did they know this dude would become a goddamn legend within like the first 20 fucking chapters or so of the story. But we're only covering chapter 1. I want you guys to go read it for yourselves. So they both stare at each other very angrily with the side eye. As we see in following that panel, and then they start arguing. Says, "You brute! You're the one that killed me." As the bald guy's pointing at the guy with the brown hair and the beard. He's like, he's very angry. I guess the guy murdered him. And he laughs. He says, "Haha, what is it to you?" Which is a fucking crazy thing to do. Laugh at the guy in the face of the guy you basically murdered. So we then get a panel of them their standoff with like this aura and like the big Korean words of like, I guess, aura or something. I don't know Korean, but obviously the lettering is in Korean, even though it is translated in English. We get another panel of Taeho terrified of what the hell he's seeing. He's like, "What is going on?" He's still wearing his glasses. He's nervous, and he says, "What the?" All of a sudden, were they enemies that stood on the same battlefield? So he's like confused, and like they went from like talking casually to now wanting to murk each other. So he wonders if they were enemies, as we see him with like the lightning bolt in the middle, where he's in the middle, and the lightning bolt hits the top of his head, and we see the two guys just facing off, kind of like if it was a death battle or some kind of fight. We then get another panel of the guy with the brown hair, beard, and long hair, like with the fiery red aura, staring at the other bald guy with the gray beard and the scar over his eye with a blue fiery aura, and they're just huffing and puffing, like steam's coming out of their mouths. It's really well drawn. Triple Line did a really good job at that. So then they go back to being friendly after that, which made me fucking laugh. The guy with the brown hair is like, "Cool, haha. Now that you were able to come to Valhalla because of me." So these two fuckers killed each other in battle, and they both ended up in Valhalla. And they're now the guy that murdered him is like, "Hey man, I got you in the club." Type shit. It's hilarious. And the bald guy with the I guess blackish grayish beard laughs. Cool. That was a fine battle. So I guess these two respect each other's game, bro. They're like, "Hey, you may have murdered me, dog, but you were kind of a fucking warrior out there, you know?" We then get more dialogue between these two. He says, "But seeing that you're here, did you die right after?" So he's like questioning, like, "You murdered me. How the hell did you get here?" And he says, well, you see, right after that, followed in the next panel, he says, "I got done in by a kid with hair braided into 5. He got goddamn, as we see the kid that he got murdered by running at him, and he points to the scar where he got stabbed, and he says, he shouted, 'Father!' while stabbing me in the stomach." And then the bald-haired guy was like, Bjorn. Turns out that the kid that killed him was his son. You know that the bald guy is proud of that shit. He's like, "Yeah, that's my boy. We only raise tough motherfuckers around here." So he's all in the next panel, he's all gleefully and happy about it. He's like, "You avenged your father." And there's like pink aura around him and the other guy, and he's also laughing like, "See, you raised a good boy, my guy." Now we're both in Valhalla. As Taeho is staring at both of them, and he's like confused. He hasn't said anything. The brown-haired guy continues by saying, "You raised your son very well. He'll be a great warrior." No, he's already an astounding warrior, because Bjorn managed to murder him in the midst of battle. The bald guy thanks him, and he's like, as we get a panel of our boy Lee Tae-hoon, frankly, and paper-fied, like he's like a sketch drawing, and he's freaking out. He's like, "What the fuck is going on?" And then he asks himself, "How did I end up in a crazy place like this?" apparently he died. Don't know how, at least not yet. So we then get a rewind back to the stadium where before all of this, where Lee Tae-hoon, we see people cheering and Lee Tae-hoon playing with his teammates on his computer, and he says, "For sure, I was about to just win the world championship for the third time in a row." And then we see another panel of Lee Tae-hoon slamming his face in the keyboard. I'm guessing he died of some sort of heart-related thing or brain-related thing. As we get a nice little pause, I guess, to pause the rewinding to the point where he died. And then he says, "Wait." As we see a panel of him, like, grabbing his head. He's like, "Ah, damn it." Could it actually be I died then? And as he's thinking back to when he fucking face planted on the keyboard, yeah, you did. You fucking died. You died right then and there. We then see another panel of him still grabbing his head and says, "Is this not a dream after all?" Like, because he was looking at these big guys and thinking he was fucking dreaming or some shit. But as he's doing that, within that same panel, we see the hand of a lady with like bracers, like sticking her hand out, basically shouting, "This one was a champion." I guess in reference to our boy Lee Tae-hoon, she says, "The one who won every single duel over dozens of battles." And then he's like, "Ooh, champion." And people are reacting to it. They're like, "Ooh, duel king. He's small but impressive. He must have good skills." So now everybody's like praising Lee Tae-hoon. And like I said at the beginning, none of the fucking feats that they're attributing to Tae-hoon was done by Tae-hoon. They were done by his character within the game. So all the kills that they're referring to is Tae-hoon using his character to do it. So I guess in a sense he did do it, but he didn't do it. It's honestly quite fascinating. And so all these dudes are celebrating and shouting as we see menacing faces. We have a bald guy with his fists rolled up, a guy with a fucking Galahorn. I think that's what it's called. Like it's like a horn that's like a horn, like a little bell horn. We have an old man with gray hair and like a yellow bandana, a dude with red hair and like a side part licking his knife, another guy with a typical Viking helmet and black beard and white glazed eyes shouting, and everybody basically saying, I do want to have a go against him. Like they all want to fucking run the hands, run the pockets, because they heard Lee Tae-ho is that dude and he's a champion. And we then get a page of Tae-ho watching all of this right next to the Valkyrie. She has like a nice white hair, gold feather in her ear, gold black feather in her ear, and like nice armor as she's pointing at him, and he's fucking confused. And this makes him nervous as he looks to the side and he says, "Right." And he looks at the fucking Valkyrie who's like doing the cute girl with sticking the tongue out, winky face, and finger up saying, "I got you, champ." And he's like, "It's because of this woman." And he's thinking to himself, "Why is she winking at me? You put me in danger, you crazy lady." He's freaking out because like she put him in danger. And so we then get hit with the title page of the chapter. We get the title, Valhalla Saga, Chapter 1, Valhalla Saga. So, as I guess the beginning of the chapter after that happens, it's we get the nice little icon that says play again, and we fast forward Tae-hoon's death after he slammed his face on the keyboard. We then see his spectral spirit lift up from his body from behind, and he's looking at his face down face on the keyboard and saying, "That's me." After that, his spectral form gets illuminated by this golden light as he's screaming, "Oh!" because it's so damn bright, it's blinding him even though he's wearing glasses. We then get that same Valkyrie that was winking at him, coming toward him, his ghost, and heading toward him and saying a warrior that's lost its life, basically in reference to Tae-hoon dying while playing games. We then get another panel of like the side chest of the Valkyrie. I don't know why. He then continues to say, after a glorious battle, while looking at Taehun, like kind of do this because he's being blinded to high heaven. He asked himself, lost its life. What? We then see the side thigh, I think on the left side of the Valkyrie, with like a nice little golden pendant. He then asks, am I dead? We then fully see her face this time, and her full upper body. She says, come with me. And Taeho then responds while she's holding out her hand. He says, where to? It's not hell, is it? As he asks. And she's pulling out her hand, basically trying to guide him to the afterlife. She's like, hand? And so Taehun reluctantly gives her his hand. And then they hit the Bifrost. Because it has the golden color. And she basically, while holding him from the hand, we get a panel of her while holding his hand, flying up to the Bifrost, I guess sending him to Valhalla as they transport, and he's screaming, wow! He's like, holy shit, I'm guessing the teleportation process is crazy. She then looks down at him in the next colorful panel, and she tells him to Valhalla in reference to him asking if he was going to hell or not. He then looks up. We see a panel of him looking up while his face is like contorted because he's being pulled and air is probably hitting him at 100 miles per hour. He says, what? Val. We then get the rest. We then get the full panel of them going up the Bifrost. Well, it's just the rainbow Bifrost thing. They hit that hits the sky. We don't necessarily see them, but we see text bubbles of Taehun screaming for his life as he leaves Korea. We then get the end of flashback thing, basically telling us that's how we got here. So Valhalla, Taegun thinks to himself, Valhalla, that's the afterlife from Norse mythology. As we see a picture of him thinking to Norse mythology of a nice Valkyrie with wings picking up this big brute of a man that's bald and brown haired and has an axe. He then says, a place you can only go if you die as a warrior, which he learned basically from the game that he was playing. So then he thinks to himself, then did she mistake me for a warrior? As we see a nice panel with the words pride and confidence above said Valkyrie. He says, judging by her expression, it seems so. I don't think she made him, and while he at this time does think it's a mistake, if you keep reading, you realize she didn't make a mistake. She was spot on. And then he tries to like fix this whole thing, and he's like, excuse me, but I'm not a real warrior. I'm a pro gamer, a person who plays games. As she basically is looking at him in confusion, and she says, games? You mean battles, like duels? And he's like, no, that's not it. As he's confused, and he says, he then asks, for now, please return me to where and she basically ignores him because something happened that took her attention from the conversation, and she looks over there, and he's like, basically sticking out his hand to say, hey, but he didn't get to say it because she was looking at a man with a basically horned Viking helmet, braids, brown or blackish, dark brown beard, and a Galahorn again, blowing it, and signaling for something. As the Valkyrie then screams, an enemy attack! Everyone prepare for battle. In the next panel, it says that. After that, we basically have a panel of the Vikings basically screaming, getting ready to battle. For battle, while at the bottom, our boy Lee Tae-hoon is fucking screaming in shock, and he's basically saying, this is insane because no one is listening to him. He's stuck in here, and and now there's a battle. So then we get cut to the nice panel of the battle where they're battling like these werewolf beings with weapons, and so we have a nice panel of both armies, the warriors and the werewolves, just running at each other, getting ready for combat. In the next panel, we get a close-up of the werebeasts, basically with sharp teeth, fucking saliva coming out of their mouths, screaming, with following another panel of one of the specific werewolf beasts with brown hair, striking one of the warriors, the same guy from the beginning with the light brown hair, the beard, the one that was killed by the other guy's son, striking each other with their hammers and clashing, right? Followed by another panel of the backs of more Vikings, basically running behind and jumping into battle. We then get a panel of Lee Taehu basically watching all of this from a distance, and he's watching all these dudes basically run the pockets with a bunch of these wolves, and he's staring from a distance. Like, we see his backside, and he's seeing all of this, and just he basically says, "What kind of madness?" And then we get another panel that says where we see him basically staring at the battlefield, saying, "What am I supposed to do?" while holding a sword like an amateur, like he doesn't know how to hold it. He even mentions it in the same panel. He says, "I've never held a real sword before." So we then get another panel of like him sweating, one glass thing, pane of his glasses lit up, and the other one where we can see his eye clearly. He's sweating, and then we get a nice bit of dialogue where it says, "Since I came here after dying," and we then get another panel like a giant werebeast. Like, we see the giant sword first, and then as we scroll down, we see the werebeast back with his muscles bloated, and we see little Taeho, our gamer pro champion, at the bottom holding a sword in the same awkward position, staring up at this werebeast. And then he thinks to himself, "What happens if I die again?" We then get another panel of the werebeast that was looking at Taeho, just straight up swinging the sword. But luckily for Lee Taeho, we see another panel that of him, but behind him is another big ass Viking with like dark brown hair, a double braided beard, smiling with golden aura and lightning coming out of his eyes, like and then he says, "Duck, young man," and we get another panel of him him striking, and then we see in that same panel he strikes the werewolf, and they clash as we see the werewolf get hit and gets sent flying. And the same old man says his move. He says, "The rock fist that caught a bear," and that move that he used on the werewolf, sent him flying. Well, you'll learn in this story is that a lot of these moves have saga names. Like, for example, this saga name is Rock Fist That Caught a Bear. It's basically one of his stories from his past that was retold and turned into a move. Basically, is talking about the time he killed a bear with his fist, and sent so we see the old man's fist, after sending the wolf flying, glowing the same golden aura, and Taeho ducking like he told him to. The old man then asks Taeho in the next panel, "Do you know about Saga?" As he, is still in the pose of throwing the guy, and Taeho looks up at him. He's like, oh. In the next panel, we see him smiling. He's like, and Taeho is still looking up at him like, what? Oh, Saga, as he says. And that's the end of chapter 1. That's a really good cliffhanger right there. That's enough to get you guys interested. What is Saga? I told you, I gave you guys a little tidbit, but there's more to it than that. And can Taeho use it? And will it help him survive in this world? And it turns out, yeah, it can. This is a really good story, and me reading this chapter hooked me to high heaven. This is what got me reading the story and got me addicted to it, to the point where I'm caught up with the whole series. Like, I'm like closer to like I think I'm like 3 chapters off, but because to read those next chapters you have to pay. I'm not gonna. I don't have any coins, so I can't pay for those chapters. I usually just don't read for a while, and I'll let the chapters accumulate, and then I go back to read because these chapters update weekly. So if you're a weekly reader, this after a certain point, like in Webtoons, you get a lot of free chapters, but after a certain point, they're blocked, and you do have to wait a week for it to be unlocked. If you're patient, you'll love this. But if you have money to spend in coins, you can unlock a lot of these chapters using like 7 coins. There's also a deal to get the chapters for free, but you have to pay like a subscription or something. Overall, really good story. I really like Valhalla Saga. I wanted to share it with you guys so you guys can also read it. Read it. I don't know how popular it is in the manhwa world, but I love it, and I wanted to share my love for it with other people, and maybe getting them to know about it. Um, so yeah, thank you guys so much for watching the video. This was fun to make. Remember, link in the description below to Webtoon so you guys can read it there, as well as other links so you guys can read it in other places as well. This is completely like online based story. It's not like a book or anything, but I still suggest you guys go support the author. So yeah, that's about it, guys. And as I said before, thank you and adios.